Weren't there enough graves in Egypt for us to stay there and die? But you had to bring us out here to die in the desert. Because when confrontation begins to arise, when there begin to be obstacles to what God is leading you to, people begin to doubt God. They begin wondering, is God really in control of this? Is God really brought us in? How could you get us to this? When somebody in here knows about walking on a journey with God, but having the adversary come at you in such a way that you begin to wonder if you were going in the right direction. They begin doubting, is God really in control? Is God really the one who brought us here? And Moses now has to stand up on behalf of God. He now has to make his voice be heard. And I stopped by here on Men's Day to tell some brother, in this uncertain world in which we live, in this uncertain day and age where we do not know what's going to happen next, if the economy is going to turn around, about families are going to get right, about cities going to get right. It's time for some men to stand up. It's time for some men to get some spiritual backbone and be the true men of valor God has called you to be. Look at some brother sitting close to you, say, brother, we got to stand up. This world is sure enough going to hell unless the men of God stand up. Moses stands up in the midst of all the uncertainty, in the midst of all the craziness, in the midst of all the despair, and tells them these words: do not be afraid, and stand firm. Because there comes a moment where you got to shut all the noise down. There comes a moment where you got to tell everybody who is doubting God's plans to shut up, close their mouths, because it's time to believe and understand that God's got a plan for your life. He tells them, stand firm, don't be afraid. Because he realizes somebody has got to reaffirm God's people and let them know God is still in control. Moses, I've got to stand up and be the voice for God. He tells them these three things, and I'll be out your way so you can go ahead and see the beatdown up in Pittsburgh. Moses tells them, he says, stand firm. Don't be afraid, because today you're going to see deliverance take place. He says, you're going to see deliverance take place. In other words, Moses said, I'd like to stand up in the midst of all this foolishness and let them know that things may look bad and things may look bleak, but God is going to separate you from what you've been in. And sometimes you and I are not able to always understand that God has the power to separate us from some things. See, that's why I love the fact that Moses uses this word deliverance. Because he says it's not just going to be something where it's no longer in your life. It's something you will no longer be attached to. Because we so have an issue as human beings of holding on to some things. But God has that power to separate us from those things. God has the power to deliver us from the very things that we used to be in. Because God stopped me by here to tell somebody that the things that you might be involved in are not inside of you. You might be in some bad situation, but the good God is still inside of you. And